out with questions. I'm more than happy to at least give you my perspective, and that is kind of what you're asking there. Your first question is, from my perspective, what the most unexpected difference between UX and graphic design are. The I don't know that, I guess once from this side, I can't tell whether or not I expected this or not. But from my perspective, there's some primary differences. The biggest difference is where the work starts and where it ends. Based on a graphic designer, web designer, the work starts and ends at a very different place than it does for a UX designer. And I will say that there's some gradation that may happen as a web designer starts to become more UX focused. So for example, a web designer and a graphic designer, their focus, if you're talking about the purest form of those, their focus is output focused. The goal is often to make something that is visually appealing and is brand aligned, a poster or a site layout, maybe a brochure. Success is measured by the aesthetics, which, by the way, I'm going to go ahead and give you kudos because the aesthetics here are really awesome. But the success is measured by aesthetics, by clarity, and whether it looks right. Now, I'm not going to say that graphic designers and web designers don't worry about whether or not something works. However, whether or not something works is a fairly low bar. Something can work and not be easy to use, may not help the user accomplish all of their goals or tasks. And it may not meet all of the business goals. And so that's kind of a little bit more of where we move towards UX. First off, UX is process focused and outcome focused versus output. It begins well before the visuals. You're going to identify your users first. You're going to know who the users are and where they are on the pathway and or what their role is. In identifying those users, if it's a fairly complex system, you might want to have personas built so that you can easily identify your Eugene user versus your business Bob and know what their goals are in that process. And after you've identified those users, mapping out journeys becomes the next thing. What's the happy path? What are the touch points and the major points of inflection that a user will undertake as they go from beginning all the way through the process to the end? And then, of course, some of that is what happens when an error takes place. What are some of those edge cases where success is still possible, but you need to be able to do something different, something new? Then you're going to take those journeys and you're going to begin testing those against the people, the personas, either in theory or sometimes in practice, going into meetings and saying, hey, is this actually correct? And validating your findings. Over time, you'll prototype things out based on whether or not you're involved in the user interface part of it or not. And your success here is now going to be measured on whether or not a user can accomplish their task. Can their goals be met? Also, you're going to be looking at whether or not the product or the thing you're building reduces friction in the correct places, but it also keeps friction in the correct places. You don't want to transfer $100,000 out of your bank account if you only have $1,000. So you need friction, but it's knowing where to put the friction and how to make it understandable and helpful to the user. And does this thing you're building, does this process you're building, does it align with the business goals? So a UX designer can feel like an umbrella term that covers web and visual design. However, in practice, it adds a layer of research. It adds validation and iteration so that not only do you accomplish the user's goals and the business goals, but you also are able to stay nimble enough to address their changing goals. And that moves us over into your question about a UX case study. and how much different and should it be different from a web design website case study. And I would say yes, they should be different. They should be different in format and in emphasis. Website case study, which would be more, kind of a traditional website that is usually short and visual. You're going to say, here's the client, here's the problem, or here's the request, the desire, here's the finished product. Maybe you'll show a few iterations on the way out to that finished product, along with screenshots. It's more like a portfolio showcase rather than a story, whereas the UX case study actually tells the end-to-end study and story of your design decisions. You need to be able to articulate those decisions. What made you feel this was the best way? And not necessarily feel, but what data provided you the support that this was the right decision. It's going to include things in that process like research, your personas, your problem framing, and were you able to state that problem clearly. And then it's going to showcase things like showing your work in math class. It's going to show your work with wireframes, with iterations, with testing, with results. And then finally, you're going to definitely show at least the current state final solution that you got there. And it shows how you think, not just what you made. Yes, what you made is on display, but you want to be able to find very easily the threads of how you think. An employer or recruiter will love this because it highlights your problem-solving ability. So you want to document. So the document that you shared, you want this document and its detailed write-up because it's already starting to lean towards a UX case study. If you're doing this as a UX case study, I like the fact that you've got goals. You make a large leap over here to the before. You definitely showcase what's lacking. I will say that there's a place here where a UX designer might want in this spot, in this part of the time frame, some of the pre-thinking, the who are the users, identifying them, framing out the problem statements, maybe various wireframes, card sorting, all the things that you can do. And then as you continue forward, you then make this next leap into more of a finished product. And this shows some of the issues that you fixed. I like this, that it at least gives you some things that you went forward with, but you also said, hey, this right here, there's some remaining problems to be solved. And so, how did you move from here to there will help this lean harder and even be more of a UX case study. And then when you make that final leap, at least here towards this iteration, there's some spots here you can fill in and say, here's how we came to the conclusion of this as the iteration. And of course, if this is a UX kind of focused portfolio case study, you may want to make some of these, as I see here, link to the full image. And make it so that when necessary and when possible, that things are readable so that people can not only get kind of a bird's eye view up here of how you solved the problem, but also be able to see a little bit more clearly. Where would I put this in your portfolio? So first off, I would say this is starting to lean towards your UX side of the case study. You could, with both of these, do a graphic design case study and have it be much thinner on the content. I will say that users, by and large, even when they're reviewing your website, they don't read. So you want to make your text what I call progressive in its format, progressive discovery. And let me give you a visual for that, a mental visual, if you will. You want bite size, you want taste test size text, okay? Something that is so small, kind of like way back in the day when you would walk around in a mall's food court, Chick-fil-A and some of the little shops, they would actually have somebody sit outside with toothpicks and little bites of bourbon chicken or whatever it is, so that you could taste test it, and it would draw you in. The next level from bite size is snack size. So this is a little more stuff, but you're not going to get full off of it. It progresses into a little bit more understanding. From snack size, you might have, this one's sometimes unnecessary, hors d'oeuvre size. Okay, this is a little bit more substantial. Okay, it's got a little bit more prep to it, but it's not a meal. The last part is the meal. So, you've got bite size, you've got snack size, you've got hors d'oeuvre, or maybe appetizer size, and then you've got your meal size text. And what that does is it allows a person to decide when they've got the information mentally, and they can then move forward without having to read a ton of text. Okay, I would suggest these differences in your web design, graphic design. Keep it shorter, keep it visual, small paragraphs with screenshots. Think of this as a showroom. And then the UX portfolio, you want to house that deep dive write-up, kind of like the one that you're sharing here. And then think of it as the behind-the-scenes workshop of the entire project. That way, if a client just wants to quickly see the visual appeal of your website that you've done, they don't have to wade through tons of text. However, if a recruiter or design manager is evaluating your UX capabilities, they can dig into the details and your reasoning and your process, and it becomes a script for a future conversation with that UX design manager or hiring manager or recruiter. All right, I hope that helps. I know this was long, a lot of words, but please feel free to reach back out, and I'll see you in the next time we talk. Thanks. Bye.